So budget 2018 is finally out. The finance minister has clearly, his priorities were very clear. It was agri, it was rural, it was infrastructure, it was social, and it was healthcare. There was very little for the common man and even little for the corporate sector. We have with us the Business Today team to decipher the budget and to analyze it. Prosenjit Datta, the editor of Business Today, and Mathew, my colleague on the right. Let me start with you, Pro. There were 3 or 4 major issues before the economy, before the finance minister got down to work on the budget. There was economic growth problem, there was job growth problem, export engine was not firing, and agri engine, of course, was really teetering. How much do you think the finance minister has been able to do, especially let's start with the economic growth?
If you are looking at the various sectors of economic growth, he has practically not touched anything except agriculture. And agriculture doesn't play a huge component in the overall economic growth.
Yeah.
Exports, hardly anything that he did except for textiles and to a certain extent the leather industry. Nothing for big corporates, and in fact a certain disinvestment for investors through the long-term capital gains. I thought it was a purely political budget.
Yeah. Preparation for the elections.
Absolutely. In fact, if I were to look at the 3 major constituents which were very unhappy with the BJP, he addressed all of them in his speech. If you look at it, there were farmer distress and farmer things were planning to spoil, where the calculation was that it would spoil most of the elections for the BJP. The MSMEs had been hit very badly by the demonetization and the disruption caused by GST. And then, of course, the Dalits were very angry and they were forming their own movement. If you look at all the announcements he made, it was made with the poor in mind, with agriculture and rural distress in mind, and with the fact that he addressed the Dalits through the education scheme, where he spent an inordinate amount of time talking about the Eklavya scheme and all that, and then of course the central healthcare scheme for the poor, which was the core voter bank.
Joe, what has been really done for the rural agri sector, especially, and to basically appease that segment of the economy which has really been unhappy with the government? There is rural distress. Farmers are not getting a remunerative price for their products, for their produce, and so that reflected in the Gujarat elections. And how much of that do you think was what was showing up in what the initiatives the finance minister
if we see what finance minister speech and also go through the budget documents, about 10 ministries, the programs of 10 ministries, the budgetary allocations have been linked.
How difficult, easy or difficult do you think is it to implement the MSP scheme? It's something that was a commitment of the government. It's happening only in the 4th year of this government's tenure. Farmers had been expecting it all this while. It's been a demand that they had been raising for a long time. Do you think the way it is planned right now, is it implementable on the ground easily?
I don't even know whether it has been planned to the last detail at the moment, because if we see that the government has said that the cost of production, a 50% extra is what farmers should get, and there will be a mechanism. And probably the mechanism that they are talking about is certain experiments which are being looked at, which going on in Madhya Pradesh, for instance, where or the farmers who are not getting an MSP, a declared MSP rate from the market, the government is trying to equalize that amount by paying them the balance. But then there are the issues which are there. First of all, we need to know exactly how much money farmers need to produce that crop, whether that is exactly reflected when you talk about
that. Defining itself is going to take some time.
So
Pro, if you look at the insurance scheme, the health insurance scheme, it's a major move by the government, the biggest health insurance scheme in the world. How much of this do you think has been thought through? Because it just looks like an announcement as of now.
An equal 5 lakhs is a significant amount of money, and the market price for premium, the market premium paid annually for such a thing by even a young family where all the members are very healthy would be Rs 20,000 rupees and more, right? Who is going to pay the entire premium? Is it going to be paid by the government? Is it a co-pay system? Then what are the exclusions? Who is taking care? Does this cover only major hospitalization, or can a person also avail of this scheme for primary health care?
So it's secondary and tertiary only, I think.
It's only secondary and tertiary. So then there are all
those
these
kind of challenges.
Those kind of challenges are there. Where is he going to get his primary health care from? And if you are not fixing the primary health care, then who is going to deliver it? Because we know that a number of private healthcare chains do not recognize government schemes because of the payment disputes that crop up.
My second last question is about the infrastructure spends. Do you think that infrastructure spends are of the nature of which they will have an effect on the ground in cranking up the economy to whatever extent it can? Because some of the other engines of the economy are just not firing. So the government wants to put in as much resources behind just this bit. Do you think that it will be able to deliver at least some of the results for the government in terms of economic growth?
See, in terms of infrastructure, if you see, I don't think that there has been a major shift or a jump from what we have seen last year. And we have seen that to that extent where the government can spend, government infrastructure development projects can happen. That has been happening, or at least the initiatives have been done. So it's they are building on that. The other portion, or the major portion, which people have been talking about, and especially in the economic survey, if you see, it has been clearly said that the future of in India's growth in the medium term has to come from the private investments that are coming.
And that's not happening.
That is not happening, and we don't see any real incentive to
But do you think this Bharatmala project, where it's taken off the balance sheet of the government, where basically NHAI is going to raise that kind of resources, 5.35 lakh crore over a long period of time, but do you think that is the way the government will move forward as far as infrastructure spends are concerned?
Yeah, as far as the government is concerned, the road projects, the Bharatmala project, as you said, it's going to be one of the key areas because they find that it is visible. You can see the change, and it will also bring in a lot of incremental and later development.
Whether you look at the bank recapitalization or you look at this Bharatmala project, there seems to be a trend where the government is trying to take big investments out of the balance sheet of the government.
That was the point that I was going to make, that the bulk of the big plans seem to be completely out of the government's direct spending. It is an increasing trend by this government to keep many of the major things off balance sheet, which is not in principle a bad thing if you can regulate it properly. But what is open to question is that whether the government has the means to regulate the various agencies involved in it in raising resources and all, and what will it do to the financial markets.
Okay. My last question is about job growth. Do you think the budget has done enough to appease, or at least to get all the people who are graduating in the economy into the job scenario, into the job market, and whether this will be able to somewhat alleviate the job crisis in the economy?
It's a mixed result, because I think that what the government aims is that, okay, at least the basic jobs for people who are not very well educated will come through the massive investment in infrastructure, because that will create jobs for laborers and other, semi-skilled people. It expects that some people will be getting jobs through the MSME SOPs that have been introduced, and that if the medium and small scale industries flourish, then it will create some jobs. But if you look at it, these are not very high quality jobs. These are not jobs which are very high paying, and they are not doing anything to increase the overall living conditions of the middle class or improve the middle class of the country.
Joe, in the rural and agri spends, do you think there can be enough job creation?
In the rural, yeah, there can be job creation in the sense there can be jobs related to, perhaps startups might find it interesting to offer solutions for the kind of infrastructure and the value addition related interventions which the government is planning. So you might find some interest there. Then you might find companies, because the entire plan is to revive the rural economy. So associated with that, maybe there are businesses. But beyond that, in the organized sector, if we really look, a major job creation.
So there is no roadmap for job creation in this budget? Really?
At least not that I could find either in the detailed expenditure reports or in the speech.
FM speech. Yeah. Well, that was our analysis from Business Today on the budget. Hope you enjoyed watching it. See you later.